Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Richard Skipper Celebrates. This is the show in which I celebrate artists and their body of worth. And today also happens to be International Day of the Artist. And all this week, that's going to be the theme of all of our shows. Not that I haven't been celebrating artists all along. I say that I'm all about celebrating an artist and their body of worth. What makes a great artist? Is it the work that they do on stage? Is it how the audience perceives them? There are so many variables involved, and we're going to be talking about that with our very special guest tonight. I want to take you back to the 80s. The 1980s, I was a piano bar junkie. Don't believe me? Let me describe a typical Friday and Saturday night when I was in my 20s living in New York City. I would start the evening off at the Monster in Sheridan Square. I would leave the Monster, and then I would go to Marie's Crisis. I would leave Marie's Crisis, and I would go to the Duplex. I'm talking about the original Duplex. I would leave the Duplex, and I would spend considerable amount of time in each of these places. Then I would leave there, and I would go to the Five Oaks. Then I would leave the Five Oaks, and I would go to 88's. And then I would leave 88's and I would go to Don't Tell Mama. And then if I felt really ambitious, I would go more uptown and I would go to Broadway Baby. And one night I happened to walk into Broadway Baby and I heard this singer. She got up and she sang and she had the most glorious voice that I'd ever heard. I hope that I am not in tears when I come back. But before I bring our very special guest on, I want you to hear the song that I heard her sing for the very first time. Ladies and gentlemen, a true artist, Natalie Douglas.
After one whole quart of brandy, like a baby, I awake with no bromo seltzer. I don't even shake. Love is not a new sensation. I've done pretty well, I think. But this half-pint imitation put me on I'm a wild again, beguiled again, a simpering, whimpering child again, bewitched, bothered and bewildered. Am I couldn't sleep and wouldn't sleep until I could sleep where I shouldn't sleep. Bewitched, bothered and bewildered. Am lost my heart, but what of it? My mistake, I agree. He's a laugh, and I love it, because the laughs on me. A pill he is, keep him until he bewitched, bothered, and bewildered like me. I've seen a lot, I mean a lot, but now I'm like sweet 17, a lot bewitched, bothered, and bewildered am I sing to him, each spring to him, and worship the trousers that cling to him, bewitched, bothered, and bewildered am When he talks, he is seeking words to get off his chest. Horizontally speaking, he's at his very best, and again, a rich, ready, ripe, juicy love again, bewitched, bothered, and bewildered.
With all due respect to Barbra Streisand and everyone else who has ever recorded that song, this is my favorite version. And Natalie, I'm so glad that you're here tonight. How are you?
Thank you. That's quite the compliment. I'm blown.
It's
I'm
true.
blown away.
And you probably get sick of my telling you that because I've been telling you that for years. I still remember that night of going to Broadway Baby and seeing you for the very first time. And I went, who is this? And God bless you. I want to tell everyone else, I also wanted to put a ticker of all of the awards that you have won and all the accolades that you have over the years. And StreamYard would not let me do that because there were just too many of them. But before we jump into all of that, I want to ask you, how are you doing really in the midst of this crazy world that we find ourselves in?
You know, I keep telling my friends it's typical 2020, which means I'm fine, I'm terrible, everything's awful, everything's okay. You know, we've been lucky, we've been healthy, so that's a huge bonus. Because I know, you know, there's so many people we both know and people I know, and I lost a relative to this disease, so it's been difficult, but it's been difficult for everyone, you know. It's been I'm also lucky that I most of the time have been in my apartment with my husband, and we actually like each other.
You both like each other.
It's a very good thing. So you know, that hasn't been bad, and we've sort of, you know, found a routine during the most strict period of the lockdown. In those days when they were saying, like, you know, only one member of the family should actually go out, Billy Joe would go and do like sort of the daily supply run, you know, and I went out once a week or so to get a few things, but, you know, basically stayed here, ran up and down the stairs, so I got a little movement in, you know, and watched a lot of Netflix.
Oh, I'm
and
glad you watch Netflix instead of watching the news, because I know that you're a new. I know that you are very.
I do that too, but I don't even count that because I do that. I do that whether quarantine's happening or. I mean, I just do that. News. It's what I do. I listen to the news.
So,
I have always listened to the news. I find it fascinating. I am. As I always say, I'm a Black woman in America, so everything's political. And I have always felt that way. So I feel like it's part of my job as a human being, my responsibility as a citizen to know what's happening in the world.
and I appreciate the fact that you say that, and God bless you, and and for everyone who is paying attention, that's very important right now. But I want to ask you, today marks 227 days since the theaters shut down. And of course, we've all been affected because we all perform in the intimate art form of cabaret. What did your schedule look like when March 12th hit?
Oh, God. Well, I was actually in California. I was doing a little run. San Diego, Palm Springs, Los Angeles, and then Orinda, which is just outside San Francisco. So the first 3 dates did actually happen. And then the fourth date was March 15th, and that got canceled as of March 11th or 12th. So we flew back early because we weren't sure at that point if they were going to close the airports, San Francisco was one of the first cities to lock down, which explains their low infection rate. And so we flew back home, and I had, I was doing a monthly residency at Birdland. So I had shows from March through November, once a month booked, that all got canceled, postponed. And this year was one of my busiest years ever on the books. The contracts were, I had a lot of gigs I was really looking forward to. A lot of travel, which I actually love. And London, I go to London once or twice a year. And all over the state.
You're there. I want to add that. I've read some of the press that you've gotten in London. You're the host of London when you're there. I was scheduled to go to London. Danny and I were going to London in August. I've never been to London, so this would have been our first first trip there.
You would love it.
I'm sorry?
You will love it.
Well, I hope that it's going to be in our future. I mean, when things started to shut down for you, and of course, hindsight is 20. Did you have any idea that this many months later we would still be living like this?
No, not at all. I had dear friends of mine were supposed to get married this month, and I was singing at their wedding with another friend, and that was one of the last things to be canceled, because we just all assumed by October 20th, this would be long gone. No, it was a rolling cancellation. At first it was things in March, and we kind of hoped that by late April we'd be back up and running, and then it was obvious that wasn't going to happen. So April and May sort of canceled simultaneously. But then, August, September, those gigs were slower to cancel. And it was just, it became clear that they were going to have to be canceled. But it kind of didn't happen right away, I don't think anyone knew that it was going to get this bad, because I don't think anyone imagined that we would have no plan. That there would be no real serious attempt on a federal level to protect us, to care for us, to do what's necessary. And I don't know that anyone imagined there would be such a weird piecemeal. It would have been one thing if there had been sort of a federal mandate to wear masks or to lock down, or those first 6 weeks. But there were states that were less affected, and where they believed that it wasn't real, or it wasn't contagious or something, and so they didn't do any of those things. And as our numbers came down, their numbers went up. So now we're in this place where it's just all over. And I don't think anyone thought that it was going to last this long. I think most of us hoped that we were talking about a matter of weeks. I mean, and even at the idea of a matter of weeks, I think a lot of us were kind of like, oh, okay, can I do this for a few weeks? Ooh, oh boy, not realizing that it was going to be, what are we now, 7 months?
Wow. I do want to cover some major highlights in your life and career, but I also want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier. You have been an artist in residence at Birdland. You've done all these incredible theme shows. Whenever my schedule allows, I am there. I try to be there for you because I just think you are just the consummate entertainer. I don't think of you as a performer. I think of you as an entertainer, because I think that you are, in addition to be a great singer, you also are incredibly funny on stage. You are also very comfortable being Natalie Douglas on stage. And I think that is why audiences gravitate to you. And I want to get to when all that began to happen for you. But also recently, you did do a stream from Birdland. Was this something that was pre-recorded and then you shared with everyone? How did that, and what did that feel like to do what you do, but without that audience being directly in front of you?
I actually loved it. I mean, obviously I prefer live performance. I prefer an audience being in the room because I feel like it's a conversation, and that conversation needs the other half of it. I've said this many times, but I had a brilliant acting coach at USC who said that when you're on stage alone doing a monologue, you're not actually alone. The audience is your scene partner. They just don't have any lines. And I translated that into singing too. And so I always feel like it's we're working together here. And so I was kind of trepidatious about the day we did the taping. But my husband said that morning as we were leaving, he said, well, the audience is there. They're just on the other side of the camera. And I was like, oh, that's a great way to think of it. And that really helped. Because we're not there simultaneously, but we are together in this virtual way. And it, Jim Caruso, who's been a friend for many years and is the impresario there for the Monday night series of Birdland and Cast Party. He and Ryan Patternite, who's the other, booking manager and producer at Birdland, came up with this idea of creating Radio Free Birdland, a channel, a producing umbrella, under which a whole lot of us have done kind of versions of our shows or new shows. And he mentioned it to me very early on, and I jumped at the chance, because you're like me, we this is what we do. This is what we love to do. We can't really not do it, So I was thrilled at the idea and happy to do it. And we were one of the first shows to tape. And so, yeah, it's taped, but it's taped as if it were the concert and as if people were in the room. So, yeah, so we don't start and stop, and it's not like taping a TV show. It's not that, It's just you run the show. And and then they are streamed later, and then they run on demand for 30 days. So now there are many, many, many shows in the can, if you will, and a lot of wonderful performers. And I've seen a bunch of things in addition to the one that I did, and I love this platform. I think it's you know the ingenuity, it's the creativity, figuring out how we're going to do this if we can't do this. So I'm happy to do it.
Now,
I've been working at. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying I've been working at Birdland for 16 years, and
wow.
It's my new home. So I am happy anytime I get to sing on that stage. So.
And you own that stage.
Joy.
I want to ask you, I mentioned earlier that one of the things that I love about you on stage is that you are your authentic self. You are Natalie Douglas on the stage. Was there ever a time in your life where you feel that you were not being your authentic self on stage? Never. From the very beginning.
No, I was really lucky. At Broadway Baby, where we first met, that room was a piano bar from 9 p.m. on, but at 6 and 7, there were cabaret shows back in the day at that room. And so I waited tables and bartended for those shows, many, many of them. And I got to see a lot of cabaret. And that's actually where I met Amanda Green back in the day, and Café Jenkins. I watched a lot of people who were wonderful and brilliant, and people who were less so, let's say. And I noticed there was for some people, there was this voice, this like cabaret persona that they took on, and I'd see them like in the dressing room and walking around the club before the show, and they were people, and then they got on stage and they became these, like, in 1947 like these weird, like fake, like these fake, like patrician accents. I was kind of like, okay, first of all, why are you suddenly an aristocrat? Like, what does that have to do with singing? Like, I don't get that. And you're not actually Cole Porter, like, assuming he spoke like that, which I don't think he did, but okay. Like, it was weird, and I thought, and it made me laugh, and I thought, okay, I am never doing that. And I worked there for about not quite a year. I think it was just a little shy of a year before I ever did my own show, and that was just because some friends there were like, "When are you going to do a show? When are you?" And I said, "Okay, I'll do one," and I picked a date, and then built a show.
Was that the first club that you worked in New York?
Yes, my first job was Broadway Baby. Although the first job offer I had was from Brandy's. I came to visit friends after college who had moved here. They were modeling and writing, and they lived on the East Side. And they found Brandy's as a place for me to go and sing.
Now, excuse me, but when you say that you came to visit, you were visiting from where?
Los Angeles. That's where I grew up.
Okay.
I'm an LA girl.
Okay.
And that's where I knew them from. It was, California friends. And we went to Brandy's because the open mic sort of format, so we had learned the etiquette. You go in and you sit and you listen and you order drinks and you tip the pianist, and then you ask, would it be all right if I sang a song with you? And I did. And then the waitress, who was the lovely Julie Shepard, came and
who I'm going to be interviewing in December. So yes, bringing her and Ricky on together.
Oh, that's fabulous! It was the two of them working that night. Julie Shepard on the floor and Ricky Ritzel behind the piano. And Julie came over to me and said, Danny wants to talk to you. And I said, who's the Danny? What's it? Huh? What? What's happening? And so she took me over to the bar, and Danny Brack, whom I adore and miss very much, he was one of my dearest friends, was the manager then, and he said, "You want a job?" And I said, "I don't work here. I don't live here. I live in LA." And he said, "Move here and I'll give you a job." So
Wow. You did.
it was about, yeah, it was about a
Now,
year.
what kind of singing opportunities were you having in LA prior to this?
In LA, it's mostly like restaurant-y things. There was a steakhouse in Westwood at the top of a high rise, or what passes for a high rise in LA. And there was a guy who played guitar and sang there Sundays and Mondays, and he knew a lot of songs, but he didn't know the words to a lot of songs. He could play almost anything. And he was a friend of a friend, and we went to see him one night, and he was getting requests for things, and he didn't know the words, so he couldn't actually sing them. He could play them. So I think he was kind of joking, but he said, it was Blue Bayou. I know that was the song. And he said, "Hey, I just got $100 to sing Blue Bayou, but I don't know the words. Anybody know that song?" And I think he was sort of kidding around, but I said, "Actually, I do." And he's like, "Here," and I stood up and I walked over and I said, "KFC," and we did it, and then he gave me the $100, and I was like, "This is awesome.
I can make money with this." I love it.
The manager, it was weird, and the manager came over and said, "Okay, if you come in every night with," I think his name was Tim, I can't really remember. "If you come in every night he's here, I can't pay you, but I'll feed you. You can order anything off the menu, and it's steak dinner. Awesome. And you can have a shot if you want it, And I was never really a big drinker, but
the reason that she wanted to perform at the Bonsoir was because she got a steak dinner out of it.
Yeah, it was delicious and delightful. So that was one thing, and I did like a couple coffee house things, and I had friends who were kind of starting bands. Nothing was really like leading anywhere specific. But I just always sang. I've been
Was there a particular style of music that you gravitated towards, or was it everything? You just loved the fact that you were singing?
It was everything. Yeah, it was everything. I mean, I always did everything. In school, I went to a private girls' school. I was in madrigals and barbershop and chorus, so that whole repertoire of girls singing. And growing up in the 70s in California, I love that sound. I'm an Eagles freak, and Linda Ronstadt and Emmylou Harris, and that and the whole 70s, like Stevie Wonder and Fleetwood Mac. I'm just that's my jam.
Stevie Nicks was on CBS Sunday Morning this morning, and if you haven't seen the interview, you have to see it. Everybody, it was just such a great interview, and she still sounds phenomenal.
She does. Yeah, I saw her. Okay, let's see. I did the Stevie Nicks. I did a show called Stevie Songs, which is the songs of Stevie Nicks and Stevie Wonder. I think that was 2017, 2016, 2017. So I went to see her Christmas 2017, I guess it was, when she did her tour through New York, Madison Square Garden, and she was breathtaking. I mean, it was fantastic. I tend to love performers who have a very specific and very strong voice, and now, they are who they are. And
I want to go back to that night that you got up and sang at Brandy's, and he said, "If you come to New York, I'll give you a job." Did a light bulb go off that night, or had you already been thinking in the back of your mind that New York was a destination for you?
That entire trip was when I decided. I had always wanted to come to New York. It was, one of my holy grail kind of places. Just every time I saw a film or a television, it held magic in my mind. And when I actually got here, I got off the plane and I was in love. It was instant. I was visiting those friends I was talking about, and wandering the city, because they both had sort of day jobs and they weren't available for me every minute that I was here vacationing. So I wandered around by myself a lot, and I loved it. I remember going to the West Side to a mystery bookstore that no longer exists, but that was in a brownstone on the West Side, at Riverside. No, West End Avenue. And there were cats in the bookstore and like used books, and I bought books, and then I wandered into Riverside Park and I sat on a bench and read a book, and it was fall and it was gorgeous, and I was like, yep, I could live here. Yep, this is happening. So I was already thinking it before he said it.
How long after he offered you a job did you make the move?
I want to say it was a year.
Okay.
I think it was about a year. Yeah. Maybe a year and a half.
And did you call him and say, I'm coming to New York?
No, I didn't. I waited until I got here. But then I called and I said, I'm here. And he said, okay. And Lauren Muffson had just gotten a West Side Story tour in Europe, I think. But she was leaving. So, so I suddenly got the Tuesdays and Wednesdays, her shift, and I worked there for 20 years. That was my day job.
And what rooms have you worked in as a waitress?
Okay. Don't Tell Mama, the old duplex, Rose's Turn, the new duplex. I actually worked there for 5 years. 5 Oaks, 88. I think, well, at one point I had worked in all of the piano bars that existed, because I think it was like around 96 or something like that. Because Mac that year asked me to present an award. I don't think I had won one yet. Yeah, I don't think I had, but they asked me to present because maybe I presented like piano bar entertainer or something, because I had worked in all of the piano bars, and they wanted to sort of celebrate, the piano bar world. So at one time I had worked in all of them. I never worked at Helen's. So it was before Helen's, whatever that was, whatever that window.
Judy's.
Yeah, Judy's. Yeah, I never worked there. But yeah, I worked at all of them. It was a fun job.
I mean, obviously you mentioned earlier, which I love, the fact that you said that you really observed the people that came in and did shows there before you did your own show. Yeah. Take our audience back. A lot of people that are watching, I know, were in New York at that time. I discovered the world of the piano bar. I used to live on 47th Street. I used to go to Don't Tell Mama's when it was one cabaret room, and I saw Karen Mason there, our opening week, Lena Katrakis, Nancy Lamott, all of these people. And it was at that time that I said, this is really what I want to be a part of. But for those who may be watching who don't know what that world was like at that time, take us back and what your fondest memories are of the energy that was amongst the piano bar community at that time.
Well, it was vivid and vital. It was, there were so many clubs, and there was a sort of revolving door of performers who all worked kind of at all of them. You know, at one when my schedule sort of settled, those first I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, I was working 2 nights a week, 2 or 3 nights a week at Brandy's, and then 2 nights a week at Broadway Baby. And so I worked 5 nights a week, and then I had 2 nights a week off. But on my nights off, I went to visit my friends who were working in the bars. So I would go to Dr. Mama, I would go to the Duplex, or, you know, and I would go and see Timmy Moore, lovely Timmy Moore, or Peter Wright.
Oh my God.
Brilliant,
Timmy.
gorgeous piano players, you know, Peter Glue. I mean, these wonderfully talented, kind, you know, welcoming, fun music directors who are also friends, you know, and people behind the bar, you know, who always made me feel so welcome. Jay Rogers, you know, Jay Rogers was notorious in those days because he would, you know, sort of bar etiquette. I was taught to bartend by my uncle on my mom's side, who was an old school bartender. He actually was like one of the first event planners in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And he taught me all this bar etiquette and like bar superstition stuff. He put me behind a bar for the first time when I was 8 years old, put me on like a milk crate and said, a girl needs to have a skill. And so I know, like, you know, bar etiquette is such that you're not supposed to leave on the buyback drink. If a bartender buys you a drink, you're not supposed to leave on that drink. That's in poor taste. You obviously tip for that drink, but then you have to purchase something before you can, you know. And Jay Rogers was notorious for buying you back so that you couldn't leave. You know, like as you finish a cocktail and think, okay, well, I'm out. You know, suddenly there's another one appearing. Oh God. So there was a night that John DiCarlo and I sat at Rose's Turn. Just, you know, blotto. I mean, John, you know, and I think it was shortly before we both stopped drinking. It was just, you know, it was fun. You were hanging out with your friends, and
it felt to me like it was a continuous party. It was a continuous party. Every weekend was a party.
And during the week too, because you know my weekend was what did I have? I had Monday off, Monday and Thursday off. I think I had Monday and Thursday off. So you know the weekend was work for me, and then Monday was my day off, my party day. And there was a lot of creative energy too, you know, because you were always hanging out after the customers left and talking about work and learning songs, and you know, people saying, people came and brought me music. Customers, you know, came in and said, I want to hear you sing this, and brought me sheet music. I was like, oh, okay, you know. It was just a lot of fun. It was a wonderful way to be like ridiculously young in New York City, you know. I enjoyed it. And I learned a lot.
Well, obviously, you know, and myself too. I said everything that I've learned as an entertainer, I learned in the piano bars. But, you know, time has moved on, and there have been a lot of changes in the industry since you first got here. Let's talk about that for a moment. What are some of the things that you love most about some of the changes? What are the things that you like the least? And what would you like to see come back that is no longer here?
Well, just speaking personally, one of the things that I truly miss is the 24 hours-ness of the New York that I first moved to. You know, we were open every night until 4. And after we closed, there were hundreds actually of diners or restaurants or bars that we could go to.
Tiffany's,
to, you know, to Potbelly. I mean, I spent,
Absolutely.
when I worked at, we went to Potbelly immediately after, and sat there until the wee hours. We sat there till the sun came up.
Yes.
And, and also because of that sort of, we're open till, the sun comes up mentality, restaurants used to be open till 11, 12, 1, sometimes 2. And then in the piano bars, we would get our second wave of customers between 2 and 4. I mean, the reason piano bars aren't open till 4 now, really, or many of them are not. I know a few of them still are.
Mm-hmm.
Is because the customers aren't there. The customers don't come. But we used to get other industry people, other restaurant staff, bar staff, and they were some of the best customers you were going to have all night because they understood waiting tables, they understood bartending, they understood tipping, and they were there to kind of relax and chill after their night. So, they always had fun stories to tell about their shifts. And I got to know some of those people really well. Some of those people are my friends to this day. So I missed that. And the other thing was, when New York was open later, you also got a lot of people in Broadway shows who would come to the piano bar and get up and sing a tune. That's how I met Beth McVeigh. And that doesn't happen. Partly because it's not, we don't bar culture is not what it once was. But also, I think because some of the things that people have, some of the material they have to sing, and what they physically have to put themselves, their bodies and their vocal cords through, and their physicality sometimes, because the choreography is a workout. They can't go out. I mean, even if they're not drinking, they can't go. They have to go and go to bed. They have to rest. So I miss that. I remember the night that Liz Calloway came in. I think she might have come to see Anne in the back room, like to see one of Anne's shows. But on her way out, sang a song with Dick Gallagher at Don't Tell Mama.
Oh, Miss Dick.
And it oh, don't you? He was just so lovely. And that was amazing. I mean, I just felt like I learned so much watching.
I will say this, every single room that I walked into, and as I'm talking to you right now, faces are flooding through my head. Every single room that I walked into was welcoming everybody. I felt like Dolly Levi walking into every club because the wait staff and the person behind the piano, or Dick Gallagher on his break would get up and come over and say, "Are you going to sing tonight?" And then somehow I remember, when I met Danny in 1990, I moved out of the city. I live in Rockland County, but I would go back to some of these piano bars, and I had a friend who came into town. And one night we all went to dinner at Joe Allen's, and she said, "Let's go to Don't Tell Mama afterwards." And I love Don't Tell Mama, and I love the staff there, and I love everything. And this is not a reflection on them. But I said, it's not the same. It's not what it was. And she says, "Oh, it can't be that different." And it was. It was very different. It was a different feel.
Yeah. I think, I think one of the things that changed was that at one time, Duplex, Brandy's, and Don't Tell Mama were all owned by Irv and Ron, so those 3 bars in particular had the same owners and a lot of the same staff. So it did feel welcoming because it was kind of a family. And then when Rob passed away and Irv sold Brandy's and, had Don't Tell Mamas and opened 88 with Karen and Rochelle, there still was some of that same feeling, And I remember when Rick Panson first bought the duplex, he said that people couldn't work in Like they couldn't work at any other piano bar except for him. That didn't last for very long because that's just not how New York was wired, you know. But I remember that briefly, that he was going to try and have like an exclusive stable of people who only worked at his version of the duplex, you know. But that
When we talk about the piano bar, but I also want to go back. When I made my cabaret debut, my first show was in November at Don't Tell Mama at midnight. Did you do any midnight shows as well?
Yes, I did do midnight. I did the 11:30, whatever, the late show on Friday and Saturdays. I did that at 88. Because when I did my first show at 88, I think it was 92. Is that right? 89. 89, okay. I think, was my first show there. But then in 92, but then I took a little break and I didn't do a show. And then 92, and then I didn't do a show for a minute. And Irv asked me to come back. And I did a show that got a lot of attention. And so he wanted to give me some kind of like consistent run, you know. And that was when we would do like every Friday in a month. You know, that's the kind of thing we would do. And so he gave me the late spot. So he said, you know, I can give you 2 months straight then, 3 months straight. And so I took that slot, which was after Baby Jane Dexter a lot of times. Wow. So that meant that sometimes my 11 o'clock show didn't start until 11:45.
God bless your day.
Oh God, I love Baby Jane.
I used to follow Blossom Jerry, and it was the same story.
Yeah. So it was the late show, and you know, every once in a while, like rarely, but a couple of times, we would sell so well in the 11 o'clock or whatever that spot was, that we actually did a couple shows later, like 1:15 or whatever, you know, sort of the spillover, you know, and I that felt fine, you know. And
there was an audience.
There was. And Irv said that, you know, when he started in the business, that was common. That, you know, a 1 a.m., 2 a.m. show, that was a common thing. So yeah, it wasn't just the bars that were open late. You know, that is one thing I really I miss. Partly, I'm sure, because I am a night owl. Like that is my natural state of being. So I'm up anyway. You know. But I also feel like,
Natalie, the perception that I have of you is, and if I'm wrong, there's something wrong with the picture, that you are an in-demand entertainer. When did that begin to happen for you? And when did you start getting booked around the country and around the world, essentially?
Well, I actually got my first few bookings like that in the early 90s. It wasn't long after I had started doing cabaret shows. I had a couple of customers from Brandy's and Broadway Baby who, you know, unbeknownst to me, were exceedingly wealthy and did not live here. One were my South Carolina ladies. Yes. One set were my South Carolina ladies, whom I adored. These like 6 women who would come to New York twice a year without their husbands and rent a limo and come to Broadway Baby. And I met them and we like just hit it off, and it got to the point that when they came to New York, they would come to Broadway Baby and they would come and see me, but they would also call me and like bring the limo around and come and get me for dinner, you know. And in fact, one of the trips they made up here, I had just started dating my husband, the man who was now my husband, and they called me and took me out for one of those dinners, and were asking me questions about this new man, you know. And I started talking about him. They said, well, we want to meet him. So they made me call him and get him to come into the city. See, he lived in Queens at the time. And come into Manhattan. And they took him out without me. They took him out dancing to see if he like could hang with us. And they gave, you know, a stamp of approval. And that was 28 years ago. But, you know, they hired me to sing a surprise birthday party at one of the husbands, a 50th birthday party for one of the husbands, and flew me to South Carolina. And
great.
I think that was the first one. And then that same year, I think, another client who's based in Dallas hired me and flew me to his Christmas party. He had this huge Christmas party for, the Dallas 1%. And so he flew me down, and that was the first, I started getting those kind of gigs. But really from the piano bar, that was when it started. And then I'd say sort of the second wave of it, really, which is now, how I make my living full time, started about 12 years ago, I guess.
I want to ask you, I can't believe that.
I don't know exactly what the first thing was, but it just...
We're almost at the end of our show, and I can't believe it. There's so much that we could go on talking about. I want to ask you, I did mention today that this is the International Day of the Artist, and I want to ask you, Bette Midler says she doesn't consider herself an artist, that it's for other people to see her as an artist, and I definitely see you as an artist. In this business, is there anything that you haven't done that you truly is on your bucket list that you aspire to doing?
Sure. I've done a little bit of television. I actually got another residual check today for all of 1 cent. But I loved it, and I would happily do more of that. And I actually would love to do more. I love teaching, but I would actually love to do like speaking, kind of a seminar sort of thing, because there's so much stuff that I think is interesting, and I think other people might think is interesting on so many different topics, and about, I think some of the things that are on my bucket list are not specifically about me as an artist, me as a performer. There are things I'd love to do that are outside, that are beyond that, or I guess extensions of that, I should say. And I think that's one of the healthiest ways to be an artist, is to have other things that you care about. It's one of the things I loved about New York. I loved growing up in LA. It was a wonderful place to grow up. But certainly when I grew up there, LA was very much a company town. It is showbiz all the time, all day, everywhere you go. Everyone's involved, even if they don't seem to be. And it's all anybody sort of talks about. And I didn't want to live that way. And in New York, it felt like people talked about other things, politics and books and fashion, and it just seemed to be more it's probably because in order to live in New York, you have to have like 5 jobs. And so, and people have other things that they do. But I just love that. So yeah, there are definitely things I would love to do. I would love to do something on Broadway, to do a play. That's what I trained to do, not musicals, but plays. My degree is in theater, and I would love to do that. That would make me really happy. But as long as at this moment, we don't know what this is going to look like. So if I could just get back to what I was doing, that would make me happy beyond.
Me too. Now, before we sign off, I want to thank everybody for spending an hour with Natalie and myself. And thank you, especially Natalie. I love you so much. You know that. I gush over you. And so I thank you for being here. I hope you all had a great evening. If you've enjoyed the show, and I hope you have, please go to my website, richardskipper.com, and sign my guest book if you haven't done so already with your thoughts about the show, because that really helps to boost me in other markets. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. So today, this is what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to go to your Facebook friends list. I want you to reach out to your, let's say, your 7th friend that pops up in your list, and then go to Natalie's YouTube page. Pick a song that expresses what that person means to you, and send them a clip of Natalie singing, especially to them, with a special message, letting these people know what they mean in your life. Now, I do have another clip that I'm going to share, because this is another song that grabs me every time I hear you sing. But before I go to that, and before we end our show, I'm going to give you the last word to say anything that's on your mind. It can be about something that you wanted to talk about tonight that we didn't mention, or it could be a message of hope and peace that you want to put out to the world, or it can be anything you want to say. This is your moment to speak to the world, and it's yours. I love you, Natalie Douglas.
I love you back, Richard Skipper. Well, first of all, the easiest thing to know that I want to say is I love you. What I often say at the end of my shows is I love you. If you ever feel like you're not loved, just know that somewhere somebody is loving you, even if you don't think so. So that is true for all of you out there. And second of all, even if you think it doesn't matter, even if you think it's hopeless and it's futile, I want to encourage you to vote if you haven't already. The only way that we can shape our future, the only way that we can become the ideal of America that we have always said we were, but we have so often fallen way short of which we have so often fallen short, is if we vote, if we take it in our hands and we make a difference. So I encourage you to do that. If not for yourself, then think about the people in your life, the young people, the grandkids, the nieces, the nephews, the future of the planet. Think about people who you love who are marginalized in some way, and their right to exist, their right to marry, their right to be free of police brutality. These are all really good reasons to vote. So I encourage you to do it, please.
Thank you, Natalie. I love you.
Thank you, Richard. I love you back.
The first time ever I kissed your mouth, I felt the earth move in my hands, like a trembling heart of a captive bird that was there in my command, that was there in my command. The first time ever I lay with you, I felt your heart so close to mine. first time